This is going to be part 3 of the homebrew build series. I apologize for how long it's been since I posted part 2. Got a little caught up with stuff going on, but we're back and we're going to be getting part 3 out and then part 4 and hopefully a first brew out very shortly in the next few weeks. I'm going to just go over some updates that have changed since part 2, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to walk you through how I'm building the power cords for the heating elements, as well as how we kind of wired up all of the temperature sensors and valves using XLR. So stay tuned and I hope you guys enjoy this. So the heating elements we opted to use are 6500 watt, 240 volt DERNORD ripple heaters. I was able to get them on Amazon. I will list a link to them down in the description below. They're tri-clamp fitting, which is nice so we can remove them, clean the tanks easily. So what I did is I just wired them up with some insulated 10-3 wire, and then we are using L630 locking plugs. That's because of the brew control unit we have. There's going to be a very interesting video coming out on that to follow, so please stay tuned. We're going to be using brew control now instead of building our own homemade setup because it just got a little too complicated, but we found a product that does exactly what we want to do. So I'm going to walk you guys through how to make one of these up. What you're going to need is you're going to need an L630 connector. You want to get one that's rated for what we're doing. So we have 30 amp, 250 volt rated connectors. So like I said, it's an L630 male plug. Basically what you do is you've got 3 wires. If you're unfamiliar, you're going to have a ground and then you're going to have 2 hots. And then what we're going to have to do is you would strip the ends of it, put the ends down, and then you just tighten it up. Make sure that you connect the right wire to the right spot. And then what we're going to do on the opposite end is we're going to have to strip this back, use some crimp connectors, and then connect it up to this end of the heating element. And I'll show you guys how we're going to do that, and we'll get moving along, so stay tuned. So what you're going to have to do first is you have to remove some of the black outside coating, and the way I do that is I just take a box cutter, cut around the outside carefully so that you don't actually cut the rubber on the individual wires themselves. And then once you have that done, you're just going to strip some wire back, and you're going to take your crimp connectors and you're going to put them on. Now when you put these on, you have to think about the orientation of them a little bit, and what I mean by that is if you put it on this way versus you put it on that way, the wire isn't going to want to turn. So wherever direction you put this on and crimp it, you have to make sure that you kind of line it up with how you're planning to arrange the wires here. This is going to be the location for the ground, and then these are our 2 hots. So the 2 hots kind of have to be facing opposite each other because of the way these terminals are set up. So I'll show you what I mean by that once I have it all rigged up, but this is going to be this, and then I've just got a basic set of crimp connectors here. They make fancier ones that are ratcheting, they're nice, but you can get an easy cheap set of those, and you can pick some of these up at Lowe's pretty easily. So here's what I mean by the orientation is important. As you can see, you have to bend these up, and that's so that the sleeve can slide over them, otherwise they would just stick out straight to the side. But in this situation, if I were to put it on this way, then I'd have to bend it really far. Whereas if I put it here, I can kind of bend it like at a 75 degree and kind of get it straight up. So that's what we're going to do. So we're going to make sure we put this on the white wire this way so that I can bend it a little bit beforehand. That way I can get the screw in there. So now, as you can see, we've got everything wired up. It's on there tight. Not a terrible idea to give it a little pull just to make sure none of your connections are loose. And then what we're going to do here is we're going to take the coupler. We're just going to slide it over. It might take a little bit of force to get it on the right angle. Once you have it over, just tighten it up and you're going to be good to go. As you can see, the way the wire is, kind of these don't line up perfectly, but if you just give it a little bit of force, get it on there. Make sure you're not cross-threading it. Once you're tight there, you're all set. And then we're going to tighten this piece up pretty tight. That way the rubber is actually being held in here and it's not pulling on the connectors if we give it a little tug. And then what I did here was you actually put this into the housing, tighten up the screws, and then you tighten up the screws on the back side, and that holds the wire down here so that nothing's getting pulled out there either. And then you're all good to go. Moving on to the actual tanks now. In the last video I ended and all the wires were just pigtails hanging off. What I did was I designed in SolidWorks just these little holders, and what they do is they hold XLR connectors. So what we have is female receiving ends for XLRs, 3 pins, and we went with 3 pins because the ball valves and the temperature sensors are 3 pins. So at the time when I did this, I did not know, neither did my buddies help me out, we didn't know that all of these would need to be daisy chained together, the temperature sensors at least. What we thought was we were going to have an XLR cable coming out and then a single XLR plugging into our control unit, and we'd have to have the same for every temperature sensor. That is not the case. The temperature sensors can actually all be linked together, and then you just have to figure out which one's where and label them, which is alright. So what we're doing to sort of compromise, since this is all done already, is we're just using splitters and male to male and female to female adapters so that we can daisy chain this whole setup together, and I'll show that once it is all wired up. As you can see here, I've got some zip ties on some, and then some are not zip tied. What we did originally was I did double-sided sticky tape in between to hold these on, but I found that in the cold a lot of the double-sided sticky tape ended up failing with the weight of these on them. So what I think I'm going to do is I'm either going to glue them and clamp it so that it dries up good, or we're just going to put some new double-sided sticky tape on and see how long it holds up for. We have double printed holders for the XLRs, and then we have triple printed as well. That's because on some of these we have the temperature sensor from the actual tank, then the inlet and outlets and such. But we did the same method all the way across, and that's how that's going to work. So that's sort of a quick update. I'm going to try and post a link to these so that you could 3D print them if you wanted to and do a similar setup. For the screws, we just used very small screws from a pack like this, sort of just M12. I don't even remember what I used exactly, to be honest, but they're just small enough so that we could screw them in right into the 3D print, and they held it fine. Sort of just had to pop through the print a little bit, and I pre-drilled the holes just a little smaller than whatever the screws were, and it's not like we're going to be pulling on them that hard or anything, so I don't expect them to fail. And then on the back side of them, there's just an opening so that the wire can go in, and I think it gives it a little bit of a cleaner look than if we just had all these hanging around. So that's sort of the quick part 3 update. The part 4 update I think is going to be a big explanation of the brewing control box and system that we got, and I'm really excited to share that with you guys. So stay tuned. Thanks for watching, and hopefully part 4 will be out very soon, as well as the first brew day.